Good morning, everyone. Today we are going to learn about the age of industrialization. In that, the industrialization process. First, we are going to discuss about the age of Indian textiles. After we discuss about the Indian textiles, then we go on to discuss about the weavers, what happened with the weavers with the arrival of the Britishers. Then we'll be discussing how did the Manchester goods come to our country. As I always request, please have textbook side of you or a notepad so that you can note down the key points. Anyway, at the end of the video, we are going to give you all the key points. All the key points will be displayed in the end of the video. So you can always watch the video once again or pause it and make the points in your text. So let us get into the learning. First, let us discuss about how was the Indian textile growth during that particular period. Industrialization in the colonies. So in India, you see how a colony industrializes. In this chapter, in this particular video module, we are going to learn how to see the colonies in India got the industries. We will look not only at the factory industries, but also at the non-mechanized sector. At the non-mechanized sector, how was the industrialization? At the same time, we will also limit our discussion primarily to the textile industry. So we will be confining our discussion. So we will be discussing only about the textile industries. Okay then, the age of Indian textiles 3.1. So here we are discussing before the age of machines, before the machines have come, the industries such as silk and cotton goods from India dominated the international market. The silk and the cotton goods, textiles which are made from India are the topmost brands which are available if you want to tell in the present day terms. The best quality of cotton and silk are available from India. The coarser cotton were produced in many countries, but the fine varieties are often came from India. As I told you, India is the producer of finest cotton. So people used to have that special privilege or honor for their Indian textiles. Armenians, Persian merchants used to come to India via the Pakistan, Punjab region, then Afghanistan, then enter into India. So they used to take the bales of fine textiles that are being carried on the camel back via the northwestern frontier. They used to cross the mountain passes and the deserts. So India's cotton is the finest cotton. So Indian cotton textiles are being taken by the merchants via the northwestern frontier. How they used to carry them? The bales of the fine textiles were carried on the camel back, passing through the mountain passes. The gaps between the mountains are called as passes. These passes were used to take the bales of the textiles and also across the deserts. What is the animal that is being used? Camel, on the back of a camel. So the vibrant sea trade has been operated during the main pre-colonial ports. So the sea trade was also dominant in India before India became a colony. They had the ports like Surat on the Gujarat coast connecting India to the Gulf and the Red Sea ports. Musolipatnam on the Coromandel coast and Hooghly in the Bengal region have the trade link with the Southeast Asian ports. So we need to understand here, there is not only trade that is being carried through land route, famously known as Silk Route, but also there was trade that is being operated through sea as well. Main ports before the colonial system has made new ports. The old ports were Surat in Gujarat, Musolipatnam in the Coromandel coast, and Hooghly in the Bengal region have operated sea trade in our country. Now, a variety of Indian merchants and bankers were involved in this network of export trade. So, the variety of traders, what are the duties that are done by these traders? They used to finance the production process, carry the goods, and supplying exporters. So, these are the main activities which are done by the Indian merchants and bankers: financing production, carrying goods, and supplying exporters. The supply merchants used to link the port towns to the inland regions. So the regions which are located in the interior places are connected with the ports. That is the main duty of the supply merchant. The merchants used to do variety of activities. In that, financing production, carrying goods, and supplying exporters were the main activities. Amongst that, supplying merchants always used to act as a link between the port towns like Surat, Solipatnam, and Hooghly, and they used to connect the interior lands. From there, they used to get the goods and give it in the ports. They give advances to the weavers, procure them the cloth from weaving villages, and carry that supplied to the ports. So the merchants, how they used to act as a link, they used to give advances to the weavers for producing goods. Once the goods are produced, they are procured and they were brought from the weaving villages. Once they were brought, they were again taken and supplied to the port region. So at the port, once the product reaches the port, the big shippers, export merchants had brokers. Once the entire product is brought here, the big shippers and the export merchants used to have brokers to negotiate, to bargain on the price, and used to buy it for as less cost as possible. They used to try to reduce as much as the cost as possible, and they used to buy it. Once it is bought, then the merchants used to supply it to the other countries. So the merchant traders or supply merchants acted as a key here. They are the link between the weavers who are producing, from the weavers, making them to produce. They used to give some amount of money as advance. Once they produce it, they will take it back, and the production is again carried to the ports. In the ports, they used to negotiate with the brokers, and then they used to sell the goods. These all things, the supply merchants will be mainly focusing on inland, interior land, where the weavers used to produce the products. So by 1750, this network controlled by the Indian merchants started to break down. By 1750, the network which is being controlled by the Indian merchants started to get breakdown. Why did it break down? The European companies gradually started to gain power. First, they were able to secure variety of concessions. from local courts. Then the monopoly rights to do trade. As the European companies started to enter into the trade, they tactically first asked for concessions from the local kings, local courts, and they took the monopoly rights. This resulted, as they got the monopoly rights, nobody else can do trade. Monopoly rights means only you have the rights over a particular activity. So there is a gradual decline from the supply of ports from Surat, Hooghly, because these are operated by local merchants. So as a result of that, the importance of the ports, Surat and Hooghly, started to get declined rapidly. The exports from those ports fell down dramatically. So now the credit that has financed the earlier trade began to dry up. The local bankers slowly went bankrupt because they were giving the credit basing on the exports and imports which are happening through the ports of Surat and Hooghly. But as the Britishers have taken the monopoly rights, there has been dramatically fell down in the operations of the port Surat and Hooghly. So the bankers, the financiers, they went into bankruptcy. In the last years of the 17th century, the gross value of trade which is being passed through Surat was 16 million rupees. 16 million rupees, but by 1740, its amount has slumped to rupees 3 million. So you can imagine how drastically and dramatically the trade has fell down, getting operated from Surat. It was 16 million before, it was been slumped to rupees 3 million. By that itself, we can understand how dramatically the operations have fell down with the entry of European companies into the trade. Now, while Surat and Hooghly decayed, started to fall down, on the other hand, we have Bombay and Calcutta getting high, rising up. They started to grow slowly because the old ports were being shifted to the new ones. Earlier, Surat and Hooghly were famous. The Britishers have entertained Bombay and Calcutta because they were their own ports. They want that ports to happen. These are the new ports. So slowly, the production of Bombay operations and Calcutta operations have started to increase, and that has been an indicator to show the growth of colonial power. The colonial power started to grow with the rise of Bombay and Calcutta. Trade through the new ports came to be controlled by the European companies and was carried in European ships, while on the other side, the trading houses of the Surat and Hooghly were struggling to survive. They fell down, they collapsed. But the influence of Bombay and Calcutta started to grow because they were controlled by European companies and they are only carrying trade with European ships. So that is how the old system of textiles trade continued in India. Now, what was the result of this? How did this change affected the life of weavers and other artisans? So in 3.1, we learned about how was the trade carried before the colonialization, how the people of the other countries have recognized the fine quality of Indian cotton, Indian textile. And the sea trade was also flourishing before the colonial trade was in existence. But with the arrival of the Britishers, they want their ports to be controlled by themselves. So they have gained concessions from the local courts and the monopoly rights. So they started to operate through Bombay and Calcutta, while the ports, existing ports such as Surat and Hooghly, started to decline. So slowly the trade got declined, and the Calcutta and Bombay trade started to grow, which operations were conducted and controlled by European companies. Now let us discuss what happened to weavers. The consolidation of the East India Company power after 1760s did not initially affect or decline in the ports from India, because slowly they started to decline it. The British cotton industries were not expanded. The Indian fine textiles were in great demand in Europe. So company was keen on expanding textile exports from India. So initially they did not want to decline the exports from India, because India's textiles or India's cotton is the finest cotton in the world. There was great demand for Indian cotton in Europe. So the British East India Company was keen on expanding the textiles export from India. Before establishing political power in the Bengal region and in the Carnatic region in 1760s and 1770s, the East India Company used to find it very difficult to get regular supply of goods for export. The British East India Company, before it has established its power and control in the Bengal region and in the Carnatic region by 1760s and 1770s, they used to find it very difficult to ensure the regular supply of goods for exports. The French, the Dutch, the Portuguese, as well as the local traders competed with them to secure the woven cloth. Means there are many people, there is competition. The French people are ready to buy, Dutch people are ready to buy, Portuguese are ready to buy. So English people find it very difficult to break that competition and get that product. So the weavers and the supply merchants could bargain and try to sell the produce to the best buyer. Because as we all know, when there is demand, automatically the cost of the product will increase. The same thing is repeated here as well. There are many buyers, and Indian cotton is the world's best cotton. So the weavers and supply merchants used to bargain and sell it only to the best buyers. This has been clearly written in the letters which were written back to London office by the company officials, saying that we have lot of competition here. The French, the Dutch, the Portuguese, and other merchants are in competition with us. We are not able to procure what is required for us at less cost. It is becoming really difficult for us, and we have to buy it at very high cost. This was the summary of the letter written by the London officials to the company officials to London. So once the East India Company gained the political power, it could show its monopoly rights on trade. It proceeded to develop a system of management and control that would eliminate competition, control the cost, and ensure regular supplies of cotton and silk. So how did this happen? As they discussed in the previous part with the head office in London, what were the problems that they were discussing? They were mentioning very clearly that they have a problem with the competition. They have a problem with the cost. The cost is very high. And due to these two reasons, we were not able to ensure the regular supplies of cotton and silk. So, once they established the political power, now they want to establish the monarchy or the monopoly rights to trade. They want to develop a system where no competition will be there, where the cost will be in our control. And due to these two, we will be able to ensure the regular supply of cotton and silk. How did the Britishers do this? Did it happen overnight? No. They followed a series of steps, one after the another. They have created a chain of events through which they gained the control. Let us look at them. First, the company tried to eliminate the existing traders. They tried to eliminate the existing traders. They had the brokers connected with the cloth trade. So they established the direct control with the weavers. They have appointed a paid servant because we all know Britishers don't know our local language. Our local traders or weavers don't know the English language. So they need a common person who knows the languages at the same time can communicate with the weavers. So they have appointed Gomasta to supervise the weavers, collect supplies, and examine the quality of cloth. So what are the duties of the Gomasta? In order to eliminate the middle person, the existing traders, the brokers who are connected with the cloth trade and weaving, they want to eliminate them. So they have established a direct contact between the Britishers and the weavers. That contact name is Gomasta. What is the duty of the Gomasta? The Gomasta's duty is to supervise the weavers, go check the weavers, collect the supplies, and also examine the quality of the cloth. These were the duties of the Gomasta. So Gomasta is an agent or a paid servant appointed by the Britishers in order to supervise the work of the weavers, collect once the work is done from the weavers, and then also examine the quality of cloth. These were the main duties of the Gomastas. This is the first step taken by the British. Coming to the second step, it prevented the company weavers from dealing with other buyers. They have confined the weavers not to interact with the other weavers. How can they do this? They gave certain amount of money as advance. So once the advances are given, you have to pay it back to the Gomastas, and also they will give you loan to purchase the raw material. They are giving advance, they are giving you loan to purchase the raw materials. Those who took the loans had to hand over the cloth that they have produced to the Gomastas. Who is the Gomasta we just discussed? He is a paid servant for the Britishers. So once you take the loan and once you get the work done, that has to be produced to be handed over to Gomasta. They could not take it to anybody else, any other trader. So like that, the Britishers started to eliminate or segregate these weavers away from the other buyers. One, they appointed a servant called Gomasta. Two, they started to give loans and also advance money. As the loans flowed in for the fine textiles, the weavers eagerly they took the money as advance, hoping that they'll be able to earn more money. They were not aware of the trap that is being laid for them. Many weavers had small plots of land where they used to do cultivation along with weaving, along with producing the things what they have taken as the loan amount. What they thought was, instead of going out somewhere, we can do our cultivation, and also we can weave by using the family labor, entire family, to support them at different stages of work. However, in many villages, there were reports of clashes between the weavers and the Gomasta. Earlier, the supply merchants had very often lived in their own villages. They used to take care of the needs and also help the weavers in times of crisis. But the new Gomastas were the outsiders who do not live in the villages. They used to act very arrogantly, marched into villages with the sepoys and peons, punished the weavers who were delaying the supply, often beaten, flogging them. The weavers lost the space to bargain the prices because they are already in a trap, because they have taken the advanced money as a loan. Now they are not in a position to bargain it. Company was miserably low. The amount of money what they were receiving for the product was miserably low, and the loans what they have to pay back were keeping them tied. They cannot go beyond that. So Gomastas are being very harsh and rude as per their duty. But when it is compared to the supply merchants, the supply merchants were Indians. Second thing is they used to live in the villages. So they never had any clashes among themselves. And at times of crisis, they used to help the weaver community whenever they need any help. So that is the fundamental difference between Gomastas and weavers. As a result of the clashes between the Gomastas and the weavers, in many places in Karnataka and Bengal, weavers deserted the villages. They left the villages and they migrated. The setting up of the looms in other villages where they had some family relation. Either they left the village and went to the town, or they have moved to a place in the other village where they had family relations, relatives. Elsewhere, weavers, along with the village traders, in some places revolted against the Gomasta, refused to take the loan amount, closed down the workshops, and taking to agricultural labor. So in some areas, they left the villages. Some people have migrated to another village where they had their own relatives. Or in some villages, they have fought with the company officials, refused to take the loan amounts, and also stopped doing the weaver workshops and took to agricultural labor. So by the turn of the 19th century, cotton weavers had faced a new set of problems. These were the problems what they were facing. Now, as the time passed to the 19th century, now there are new problems which are coming up. What are the new problems that are going to come up? That is, Manchester comes to India. Manchester comes to India. So let us see how the Manchester goods have also created problems. for the cotton weavers in India. The Manchester comes to in India in 1772. This is a subtopic what we are dealing now. In 1772, Henry Patullo, a company official, had ventured to say that the demand for Indian textiles could never reduce. Why? Why means other nations have produced very less quality. No other country in the world could produce the same quality of cotton textiles in the world. It is only India which produces the finest qualities of cotton, finest quality of textiles, fine quality of silk. So, the beginning of the 19th century, we see a long decline in the textile exports from India. Till now, we discussed that India is going to produce the finest textile, so never the demand is going to come down. But now we are discussing by long decline of textile exports from India. So in 1811 and 12, the price good accounted for 33% of India's exports. By 1850-51, it was no more than 3%. Don't you think it's a bit contrary? One side you start with a statement saying that Henry Patullo, a company official, that India's cotton is the best cotton which cannot be replaced by any other cotton. The other side you have a statistical data saying that the production was 33%, which has been slashed down to 3%. What is this? How did this happen? What were its implications? As the cotton industries developed in England, the industrial groups, the owners of the industries began to be worried about the imports from other countries, especially from India, because they know India's cotton is the finest cotton. They pressurized the government to impose import duties on cotton textiles so that the Manchester goods could sell in Britain without facing any competition from outside. When will we be scared of other components, the competition member? Because when we know they are very strong. Here the Britishers are well aware of that Indian's cotton is the finest cotton. If you cannot restrict it, we cannot sell our products in the market. That's the reason why the industrialists started to pressurize the government to increase import duties on the cotton so that they become costly and the Manchester goods become at the comfortable level they can sell their goods. At the same time, the industrialists also persuaded the East India Company to sell the British manufacturers the goods which are manufactured in Britain in Indian market as well. So one side they want to stop the Indian cotton coming into Britain. The other side, what they are producing here, they want to sell it to the Indians as well. They want to use it as a market. So British cotton goods increased dramatically in the early 19th century, and by the end of the 18th century, there had been virtually no import of cotton price goods into India. There were not any major imports there. But by 1850s, cotton piece goods constituted over 31% of the value of the Indian imports. And by 1870s, that figure has raised to 50%. In 1800, there were no imports into India from Britain. In 1830s to 1850s, if you see, it is 31%. 1870s, if you see, it is 50%. Now, one side, the English merchants or the industrialists have stopped the import of Indian cotton into Britain by increasing the taxes, import duties. At the same time, whatever is there in India, that is being kept in India only, and from here they are supplying the machine made goods into the Indian markets by tying up with East India Company. That has been increased year after year. So the cotton weavers in India thus faced two-sided problems, or two major problems at the same time. Their exports collapsed. The local markets shrank down because they are being glutted by the Manchester goods. They have two sides the problem, because the produce that are made by machines are available at low cost, and this imported cotton was so cheap that weavers could not easily compete with them, because the fine quality is in India, the low quality is in abroad. So they're getting the low quality products, that too the machine making products, and they are selling it in India. In 1850s, the most of the weaving regions of India narrated the stories of decline and desolation. Sad part. By 1860s, weavers have to face a new problem now. One more problem adding to them. They could not get the sufficient supply of raw cotton of good quality. Why? Why means the American Civil War broke out. Cotton supplies from the US were cut off. So Britain turned immediately towards India, and they took away all the raw materials from India. The price of the raw cotton also shot up. Now the weavers in India were starved of supplies. They were forced to buy raw cotton at exorbitant prices, extraordinarily costly prices. Why? Because the raw cotton which is coming from USA has been blocked due to the American Civil War. The Britishers looked at the other alternative immediately, and they went to India. They are already in India having the colonial control. They started to take away the raw cotton. So now to take the raw cotton from the market, from Indian market, for the Indian weavers, also it has become costly, because there is a demand for that. So then by the end of the 19th century, the weavers and the other crafts people faced another problem, that is, factories in India began to produce and flood the markets with the machine made goods. Export not allowed. They are importing Manchester goods. Yes. The raw cotton cost increased. And now the factories in India started to make more and more machine made goods, and they also started to give competition to the Indian weavers. How could the weavers survive now? Is there any chance that is left for them to survive? No chance. That was the toughest times where the Britishers have made problems for the Indian weavers. So let us see what happened later in the coming module. Thank you.